Yes. To put it bluntly, it's quite accurate, Alex. As to the pedigree, let's just keep it. I'm an American citizen, a veteran who really cared about our country. And as I said before, it really started with 9/11, continued on with the Clintons, continued on with Bush Jr., continued with Obama. Obama came in as an affirmative action candidate created by the CIA, as I've said. He had no experience, he's had no accomplishments, and he has created absolutely nothing but a disaster around the world. Those people who worked with me quietly, and those people who understood the integrity of the republic was paramount, allowed me to say, we're going to do a counter coup. We were waiting for Hillary to do exactly what she did. I've said from the very beginning that Hillary was not as bright as everybody thought, nor were her advisors. When she fell into the trap that we said, and actually you said as well, that she's not competent, that she really has no idea of what she's doing, that she's physically and mentally not capable of being the president of the United States, she went after you. And that's exactly what we expected would happen. What was stupid was to really say that Alex Jones and the people behind it, i.e. myself and others, they did, Alex. And in a world of intelligence, quite frankly, that is pretty pathetic. That's what we call a jump shot. It was the easiest thing in the world. But more importantly than that, the people who I deal with, now remember, I do not get paid. I do not represent any official organization. I am simply a citizen of the United States. It's as simple as you can make it. They gave me the go-ahead to say, okay, we're going to dump emails that have relevance to Hillary, to Comey, to the CIA, and to a whole group of individuals who will be compromised. And I told that before it happened. The Russians were not involved in that. Putin has better things to do than to mess around with our election. He had nothing to do with it. And basically, it was completely created by those of us who wanted to see the integrity of the republic reinstated. And Trump would come in with a new way of dealing with the republic and with the people who were involved in a lot of chicanery. And as you've seen now, Trump did something no other president has done. He literally cleared out the Republicans who try to get rid of an ethics committee. Now, Julian Assange, I do not know him. I have never met him. I will tell you he is a patriot of this country. He allowed his services to be used by those people who I dealt with and who were concerned as I was concerned, and he was the venue. When he says repeatedly that the Russians were not involved, that no Republican or Democratic Party was involved, take his word for it. Now, I couldn't have come on to your show weeks beforehand to say, look, Hillary and the Democrats have created a coup. It's called a civilian coup. We, in turn, those of us who are concerned, I did not delineate any group or any individuals involved, will create a counter coup. How that came about was a surprise to everybody. And that was the leakage of all this email to you, to the country. But remember, you are the spearhead of much of what's happened. I know you don't like to be lauded, but it is true. Your show and your voice was an important element to spear our discontent and our anger through into something that was constructive. And the constructive part was to get rid of the corruption in the CIA, the corruption in the intelligence community, the corruption in the DNI, the corruption in the civilian sectors, and the corruption in Congress and in the candidates who were running. That happened. Now, what they're waiting for is Trump to really bring in the axe.
I understand, but let's talk about...
You may be right. I don't disagree. But when when one is incompetent like Hillary and those who surrounded her, well, and Soros himself, what we call him the Judenrat, the Jew who worked with the Nazis, and you made that very clear. When you have those kind of people, we're not concerned because they've already been eviscerated. And when I say eviscerated, I mean intellectually, emotionally. The entire DNC is non-existent. They literally have no recourse to anything. They can do whatever they want. At this point of time, Trump talked to Mr. Slim, who owns the New York Times. What happened after that meeting? What happened after that meeting, the New York Times indicted and convicted this administration for having had the most severe suppression of writers and leakers that has ever occurred. In other words, the New York Times themselves came up and said, Hillary, Obama, and this entire group has convicted more whistleblowers, more journalists than all of the administrations put together. And in fact, one of the Washington Post editors who was involved in Watergate said that this administration is far worse than what Nixon was. So what you're seeing now is a counterattack to each one of those elements, taking down the New York Times, taking down the Washington Post, taking down CNN, taking down Fox. Now Megyn is going to, wherever, NBC, but they're not relevant. The most important issue that we have brought across, and you've said, is the fact that now you have become the major voice of what is called the alternative media. In reality, the alternative media is the media, because the internet became our tool. That's why no, and not only it's not going to work, Obama has no legacy. What happened is we literally stripped him of any credibility and legitimacy, which he never had from the beginning. When he first came in, I said, this is a man who's created by the CIA, John Brennan, and a bunch of morons to compensate for the fact that the agency had brought us into 9/11 and that they were involved. So in their thinking, they thought a Muslim or a mulatto individual with no background and a history of homosexuality can be exceedingly vulnerable and controllable. They brought him in. He had no history of accomplishment, no history of having been anywhere other than with Peter Geithner in overseas in some posts. The truth of the matter is he accomplished nothing. The scandals that he incurred were phenomenal. Sandy Hook, Osama bin Laden nonsense, Libya. He created such a problem in Libya that today we cannot handle it.
And let me throw
Alex, again, I know you don't like to be lauded, but again, it goes to the issue that you and I have talked about and have been involved for over 14 years. When you see the predominant leaders of high-tech companies, including Jeff Bezos, sitting next to Trump, that's the kiss of death for anybody who thinks that they're going to attack Trump through the Washington Post. Similarly, Trump went to Slim, Carlos Slim, and that was the kiss of death with anybody on the Democratic side or the left wing to think that they're going to use the New York Times. So what Trump has done, he's very bright and very strategic. He's literally negated and obviated any ability of the mainstream media to come after him with any credibility. So what's happened is, thanks to your show and thanks to others, the media that's becoming alternative, i.e. the New York Times, the Washington Post, they're all attacking Obama. For the first time, I read that Obama is worse than Nixon in terms of Watergate.
That's right. The flip started, what, about a week ago?
Correct. It literally, that's exactly right. So you can almost calculate from the pictures where Trump is sitting down with others who is going to be co-opted, and in turn, Bezos was co-opted, Slim is co-opted.
So we see the...
Well, they may have CIA, but again, the key element here when Trump...
No, I know, but I mean leftist foundation operatives that happen to have a CIA name.
I understand, but the point is the CIA is irrelevant. That's why Michael Flynn has been put into the White House. That's why you're going to have a military man in the CIA, Pompeo, and you're going to have a military man as Secretary of Defense. It's not for us to go to war. It's simply for us to negate any of the nonsense that civilians who've never been in war, who have created war, will be neutralized.
Exactly. You've got a bunch of trendies trying to play at war, and they've wrecked the country in the process.
Correct. Now you got it. And that's exactly what happened with Bill Clinton, what happened with Bush Jr., affirmative action for stupidity and spoilage, a guy who had no idea of what he was doing, attacked our own country to go to war in Iraq, which was a disaster. Now we have a bigger disaster. Obama has no idea of what to do with 500,000 people that he helped to kill in Syria and 1 million refugees that he facilitated by his inaction and inability to think strategically and tactically. This is an indictment of Obama, his White House. His White House is, again, a repetition of the inept and happens to be affirmative action. Susan Rice, she's black. Valerie Jarrett, she's black. You go on. I mean, when you have affirmative action, whether it's again for blacks or whites, you mitigate the issue of competency. If competency,
you're just talking about nepotism.
Well, it's not only nepotism.
It's like political nepotism. George W. or Loretta Lynch. These are obviously idiots.
Correct. But when you have that kind of nepotism and you have that kind of discrimination saying, oh, nepotism and affirmative action and being a woman is more important than competency, then you lose the credibility of the republic. And that's what I was fighting for. And that's what you were fighting for. And that's what our military men were fighting for. Why the military? Because like physicians, the military is socialized to be a profession. That is, you don't make mistakes. You just don't cavalierly send people into war so they can die. You have a guy like James Mathis who's called Mad Dog, but in fact, he's so far more intellectual than any other Secretary of Defense we've had. It's completely absurd. When you think of Gates and you think of Cohen and you think of Rumsfeld, these are morons. These are guys who were pathetic individuals who worked on the issue of pandering and then getting their job because they were on the opposite side or they pandered their way through. Those days of pandering, those days of the politician, they're coming to an end. I will make another prediction. Because of the internet, we will devolve power from the federal government back to the states, back to the counties, and we will start eliminating the need for senators and congressmen. They have been wasting our money, wasting our time, and in fact have become an impediment to the rule of government.
They've turned into regional czars.
That's correct. Or as I would call it, a nursing home for those who can't work anywhere else. It's become pathetic. And so no matter whether you're Republican or Democrat, you have people like James McDermott, who I hired, was a psychiatrist for children and adults, a total disaster when I put him into the field. A complete disaster as a psychiatrist and as a regional medical officer. But nevertheless, he got elected through the Boeing Corporation in the Washington State.
Well, let me ask you.
I agree with you in many ways, Alex, but what Trump understands and what Obama did before him is the fact that the executive orders are going to basically obviate the need for Congress. If Republicans don't come into step with Trump, they are going to lose and they will be co-opted. So that's but remember, what Trump did was to bring Miss Chow, C-H-O, back in again, who is the wife of Mitch McConnell, which gives the warning to Mitch McConnell, clean up your act or get out. And basically, Trump has made it very clear, you either step in line with him or you're out and you won't be involved. And so
he's got to get rid of Paul Ryan because he's still weaseling around.
Paul Ryan is nothing more than a kind of a policy wonk who has nothing else to do, never created a business, never did anything on his own. I want to thank you. You've been very modest about your capability, but the reality is, in my world, when I tried to access the radio right after 9/11, there was only one man who came forth and had the courage. And it's a simple word called courage, and that was Alex Jones. And it was your audience. Your audience has been phenomenal. They're all over the world. I get responses from Australia, England, everywhere. These are wonderful people. But remember, a moment of courage can take down so many administrations and so many problems that you can't underestimate what you have done. Now, I don't want to call it victory because there is no victory.
It's a continuum. It's a continuum.
It's a continuum. That's correct, Alice. It's a continuum of our continuing to struggle to clear out what's a mess and to use the latest tools that you use, that Trump had used, and that the Americans understand social media. Now we're going to be in a bigger world. We're affecting now Brexit, which I told you
You
would
know what?
affect. I think what Trump has to do now is to make sure that the people he puts in place in all the institutions